हेलो स्टूडेंट्स, आप सभी का हमारे चैनल विद्या क्लास 10th में स्वागत है। स्टूडेंट्स, इस वीडियो के अंदर हम कंटिन्यू करेंगे क्लास 10th हिस्ट्री का चैप्टर नेशनलिज्म इन इंडिया। उनके जो इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन आंसर्स है वो हम इस वीडियो के अंदर कंटिन्यू करेंगे। क्वेश्चन नंबर 13 तक हम जो पिछली वीडियो में हम रीड कर चुके हैं, इस वीडियो के अंदर हम क्वेश्चन नंबर 14 से आगे कंटिन्यू करेंगे वीडियो। अगर आपने पिछला वीडियो नहीं देखा तो उसे मैं आई बटन में ऐड कर दूंगा, आप वहाँ से उसे जाकर देख सकते हैं। तो चलिए इस वीडियो को कंटिन्यू करते हैं। क्वेश्चन नंबर 14, why salt was chosen as a weapon by Gandhiji to fight against the Britishes? Answer: salt was something consumed by the rich and the poor alike, and it was one of the most essential items of food. The tax on salt and government monopoly over its production revealed the most oppressive. आप इस पेज का स्क्रीनशॉट ले सकते हैं। Oppressive face of the British rule. Question number 15. Explain the course of the Salt March. Answer: first point. On January 31st, 1930, Gandhiji wrote a long letter to the Viceroy communicating his decision to start the civil disobedience movement. This letter includes 11 general and specific demands. Second point. On 12th March, Mahatma Gandhi began his historic march from Sabarmati Ashram to Dundee, a town on the Gujarat sea coast. He was accompanied by 78 of his trusted volunteers. The march was over 240 miles. The volunteers walked over 24 days, about 10 miles a day. Thousands came to hear Mahatma Gandhi wherever he stopped. Next point. On the morning of 6th April, Gandhiji violated the salt laws, manufacturing salt by boiling seawater. Gandhiji campaigned against the salt laws was signal to disobey the government laws. Question number 16. Why was the civil disobedience movement called off by Gandhiji? First point. When Indian leaders were arrested, angry crowds demonstrated in the streets of Peshawar, facing armored cars and police firing. Many were killed. A month later, when Gandhiji himself was arrested, industrial workers attacked police post. Please take the screenshot, students. Government buildings, law courts, and railway stations and old structures that symbolize the British rule. Next point. A frightened government responded with a policy of brutal repression. Peaceful satyagrahis were attacked, women and children were beaten, and about 1 lakh people were arrested. Next point. To break the deadline between Congress and the government, Lord Irwin invited Gandhiji for a peace pact, that is Gandhi-Irwin Pact. Under such a situation, Gandhi called off the movement. Question number 17. When was the Gandhi-Irwin Pact signed? Mention the provisions of the pact. Answer: Gandhi-Irwin Pact was signed on 5th March 1931. Provisions of the pact are: first point, Gandhiji consented to participate in the second roundtable conference. Next point, the government agreed to release the political prisoners. Question number 18. Why was the civil disobedience movement relaunched by Gandhiji? Answer: failure of second roundtable conference. In December 1931, Gandhiji went to London for the conference, but the negotiations broke. down and he returned disappointed. Next point, new cycle of repression. Back in India, Gandhiji discovered that the government had begun a new cycle of repression. Abdul Ghaffar Khan and Jawaharlal Nehru were both in jail. The Congress had been imposed illegal and a series of measures had been imposed to prevent meetings, demonstrations and boycotts. With great apprehension, Mahatma Gandhi relaunched the civil disobedience movement. Question number 19. Explain the contribution of various social groups in CDM. Answer: first point. Rich peasants. Being producers of commercial crops, they were very hard hit by the trade depression and falling prices. As the government refused to reduce revenue demands, they in great number of participated in the boycott programs. For them, the fight for Swaraj was a struggle against high revenues. Next point, women. The women participated in protest marches, manufactured salt and picketed liquor shops. Many went to jail. They began to see service to the nation as a sacred divine duty of women. Next point, business class. A large number of merchants and industrialists supported this movement. They reacted against colonial policies that restricted their business activities. They wanted protection against import of foreign goods. Next point, the industrial working class. The industrial working class did not participate in the civil disobedience movement in large number except in Nagpur. They selectively adapted some of the ideas of Gandhian program like boycott of foreign goods as part of their own movement against low wages and poor working condition. Next point, poor peasants or tenants. The poor peasants demanded remission of rent which they had failed to pay during the depression years. In some parts of the country, they launched a no rent campaign which was not supported by the Congress. These poor peasants joined a variety of radical movements often led by socialists and communists. So the relationship between the poor peasants and the Congress remained uncertain. Question number 20. Why the business class participate? Answer. During the First World War, the Indian merchants and the industrialists had made huge profits and become powerful. Keen on Keen on expanding their business, they now reacted against colonial policies that restricted business activities. They wanted protection against imports of foreign goods and a rupee sterling foreign exchange ratio that would discourage imports to organize business interest. They performed the Indian Industrial and Commercial Congress in 1920 and the Federation of the Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industries in 1927, led by prominent industrialists like Purushottam Das Thakur Das and G.D. Birla. The industrialists attacked colonial control over the Indian economy and supported the civil disobedience movement. When it was first launched, after the failure of the second roundtable conference, business groups were no longer uniformly enthusiastic. They were apprehensive of the spread of militant activities and worried about prolonged disruption of business. They were worried about the growing influence of socialism among the young members of the Congress. Question number 21st. When and why was the Pune Pact signed? Answer. Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar was nominated as a delegate of the oppressed classes for the second roundtable conference. In the roundtable conference, he clashed with Mahatma Gandhi by demanding separate electorates for the Dalits. Next point, when the British government accepted Ambedkar's demand, Mahatma Gandhi began a fast death. He believed that separate electorates for Dalits would slow down the process of their integration into the society. The issue was eventually resolved through the Pune Pact of September 1932. It gave the depressed classes reserved seats in provincial and central legislative councils, but they were to be voted in by general electorate. Question number 22. Why for a long time the Congress had ignored the Dalits? What role did Gandhiji play in uplifting them? Answer. For long the Congress had ignored the Dalits for the few often offending from the Sanatanis, the conservative high caste Hindus, but Mahatma Gandhi declared that Swaraj would not come for 100 years if untouchability was not eliminated under his conductive program. He laid stress on the removal of untouchability. He called them untouchables, the Harijans meaning children of God. He also organized satyagraha to secure their entry into temples and access to public wells, tanks, roads, schools, etc. He himself toured the colonies and even lived there. He even cleaned the toilets to dignify the work of the sweepers. Question number 23. Idea of nationalism also developed through a movement to revive Indian folklore. Explain. Answer. First point, history and fictions, folklore and songs, popular prints and symbols all played a part in making of nationalism. In the late 19th century, Indian nationalists began recording folk tales sung by bards and they toured villages to gather folk songs and legends. Next point, this was done to promote the traditional culture that had been corrupted and damaged by the Western forces. Next point, to revive the folklore, Rabindranath Tagore himself collected ballads, nursery rhymes, and myths and led the movement for the folk revival. Next point, a massive four-volume collection of Tamil folk tales, The Folklore of Southern India, was published by Natesha Shastri. He believed that the folklore was national literature. It was the most trustworthy manifestation of people, a real thought and a characteristics. Question number 24. How flag was used to promote the spirit of nationalism among the Indians? During the Swadesh movement in Bengal, a tricolor flag, red, green and yellow, was designed. It had 8 lotuses representing the 8 provinces of British India and a crescent moon representing the Hindus and Muslims. Next point, by 1921, Gandhiji has designed the Swaraj flag. It was again a tricolor and had a spinning wheel in the center representing the Gandhian ideal of self-help. Next point, carrying the flag, holding it aloft during marches became a symbol of defiance. थैंक यू सो मच स्टूडेंट्स, ये वीडियो हमारा यहीं पर एंड होता है। स्टूडेंट्स, इसके बाद में आपको कौन से चैप्टर पर और कौन से सब्जेक्ट की वीडियोस चाहिए हमें कमेंट कर ज़रूर बताएं। अगर आपको ये वीडियो अच्छा लगा तो प्लीज़ हमारे चैनल को सब्सक्राइब कीजिए और इस वीडियो को लाइक कीजिए। थैंक यू सो मच स्टूडेंट्स।